And we continue now our look behind the badge, preventing police suicide. Now, we've talked about the stats, we've heard the personal stories, and we've talked to the people who are trying to find solutions to prevent just one more death by suicide. And Carolyn Fortino rejoins us now to tell us more about peer support on the force, because it's very important.
That's right, Rich. Peer support in police departments has evolved over the years and has become an integral program in light of the disturbing events we've been discussing. Experts say that there is no single answer as to why a cop will take his or her own life, but everyone agrees that a proactive outlook is necessary to combat the problem.
People began to look at the impact of traumatic stress, critical incident stress on police, fire, and EMS. Here in Long Island, there was no program available to deal with that. As a matter of fact, in most places in the country, there were no programs available. So in the latter part of the 70s and very early in the 80s, I began to look at what was happening to police officers and our EMS staff when they would respond to major incidents. And at that point, began to formulate the plans for the critical incident program, which we call peer support.
Dr. Raymond Shelton has devoted nearly his entire professional career to emergency service. As a corpsman in the Navy in Vietnam, a volunteer firefighter, and 35 years with the Nassau County Police Department, Dr. Shelton has always played a role in helping others and preventing tragedies. He began his law enforcement career training and licensing new officers to be emergency medical technicians, calling his recruits a lifeline that can often make the difference between life and death. Dr. Shelton responded to what he refers to as the worst call he ever got in his life, the Avianca plane crash of 1990. He says that's when he decided to initiate a major change for the police department and its first responders.
It was a February night, and this was a 707 that was coming in from Colombia. It was an orphan flight, and there's something very interesting about that. In police work, emergency service work, we respond to children almost in a different way than we respond to adults. It was en route to JFK, and there was a number of young children. I think the youngest was 6 months, and the oldest might have been like 14, and these kids were coming to meet their new adoptive parents. Plane ran out of fuel and crashed just over the Theodore Roosevelt Summer White House at Sagamore Hill. And we ended up that night with a number of dead. A lot of those dead were children, and it was a very difficult night to face.
Nassau County's Critical Incident Stress Management Peer Support Program was created as a direct result of the Avianca plane crash. Dr. Shelton says the emotional distress from the tragedy was overwhelming. He spent the weeks following the crash counseling and watching over each responder who was there. From that point on, whenever a traumatic incident happens in Nassau, designated peer support leaders are deployed to the scene. The peer support monitors officers in the immediate aftermath of a disturbing event to make sure cops are not exhibiting signs of stress or depression. The Nassau County Police Department works with the peer support group to set up training exercises so that counselors can be prepared to work with officers during a live call.
We have some standing procedures where when there's death of children, homicides, serious multi-vehicle accidents with multiple injuries, events that are just extremely powerful in nature, we will generally call out the peer support team. And their role when they respond to those events is to observe and identify officers who may be having some difficulty with the event and provide them with information, support and educate them through that process. And along with that, we have done some training with our supervisors so that they're aware of what traumatic stress is, the impact that it has on performance and safety, and have them provided, be able to provide some assistance to their staff in the aftermath of an event, and to know when to call the peer support team if necessary.
Mary DeZago has been the Senior Critical Incident Stress Management Team Coordinator in Nassau County for the past 11 years. She is the one who sits behind the operations desk, waiting for the phone call that says something devastating has happened and officers may need her help. By providing cops with an instant safety net at a tragic event, the Nassau County Police Department hopes to prevent serious emotional issues before they arise.
We have little computer chips in our heads, and we record everything. So even at the onset, maybe the impact didn't come to the surface, and it seems like it's not superficial at all, in the sense that it's apparent. But after 5 or 10 years, there's got to be a dent that was left, a mark. And the police department recognizes that, and they say, hey, you know, we hired you, we're asking you to do something that most people wouldn't even think about doing. So as much as they're different types of individuals that maybe have more of a capacity to see that kind of stuff, they're still human beings. And that computer chip is going to continue to record data. And at some point, it may get into overload. And that point is different for everybody.
Over the years, the Nassau County Police Department has become more cognizant of the emotionally and physically demanding nature of a career on patrol. The county's peer support program continues to evolve to this day, providing courses and pamphlets to cops should they encounter depression or thoughts of suicide down the road. Experienced police counselors say the most difficult part of this deadly problem is that it is nearly impossible to determine the reasons why a cop would choose to end his or her own life. Fellow officers and supervisors are trained to look for warning signs and risk factors, but too often the problem is not recognized until it's too late. Dr. Shelton says the most valuable way to prevent police suicide is to help officers understand that even though you are a cop, reaching out for support is okay, especially if it can save a life.
I think we come into this world, and I think it's easy to say that people in emergency service, and certainly police officers, the coined phrase has been, we're the John Waynes of society. We're not hurt unless blood and bones are showing. And that's just not true. There are things in life that hurt very, very powerfully, and we need to understand that it's okay not to be okay. That while we may be powerful and capable of doing a job that many, many people would never want to do, the potential is there for that exposure to have an impact that's negative for me, negative for my family, because of how I may be responding in a negative way to that situation. So by all means, it's okay not to be okay.
After researching police suicides and talking to counselors over the past few months, it's clear that the hardest part is stepping forward. But one life lost is one life too many, and the help is out there for officers if they need it and seek it. Rich?
You know, Carol, I like that line at the end. It's okay to not be okay. It sounds good, and I know the intentions and the programs are very real and completely well-intentioned, but you've been speaking to people both on cameras you saw, but also off camera. They shared a lot. What do they still agree is the biggest hurdle that's still a real challenge to get through to guys and women that are struggling on the force here with some really dark thoughts?
Well, you know, Rich, we talked about the stigma that comes with coming forward and admitting your vulnerabilities. And I think for so many of these cops, that is just a really high wall for them to get over. But if you don't get over that wall, the outcome is just too clear. I mean, you hear all the time that committing suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I think that these cops need to understand that no matter how bad things might seem, their lives have value, and there are always things that they can do, you know, to get themselves help before they do something as drastic as taking their own life.
All right, Carol, great job. Thank you very much here. A terrific report.